d'unités de compte, avec un taux de décaissement qui se situe à hauteur de 44%. Par ailleurs, le portefeuille du secteur public régional comporte 8 projets multinationaux d'un montant d'à peu près 260 millions d'unités de compte pour un taux de décaissement de 33%. Et ces projets régionaux visent à renforcer la connectivité entre le Burundi et d'autres pays de la sous-région d'Afrique de l'Est, d'Afrique centrale et du Sud, notamment les pays frontaliers comme la Tanzanie, le Rwanda, la RDC et au-delà jusqu'en Zambie. Et au niveau du secteur privé, le portefeuille comprend pratiquement une seule opération, à savoir le projet de facilité de garantie des transactions commerciales de la Banque commerciale du Burundi pour un montant d'à peu près 4 millions. Ici, je dois améliorer qu'il y a une nette amélioration qui s'observe au niveau des indicateurs du portefeuille parce que les taux, comme je l'ai dit, décaissement encore faibles vont quand même en s'améliorant d'année en année.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I know that there's a lot that is taking place in your country, lots of transformations, but just because of the limitations of time, we do have to move on to our next panelist. I'm getting a signal in my earpiece, so I do have to come to His Excellency, President Joachim Chissano, for the next question, and we'll provide very short comments to close out this round. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. President Chissano, you played a globally recognized and acknowledged and much appreciated role in championing debt arrears clearance for countries facing debt challenges on the continent. To your mind, what can and should Africa do to improve its debt situation? You've been involved in several negotiations, several discussions. If you wouldn't mind sharing your experiences with us, that would be much appreciated. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you very much. I would like to start from where I thought I would end if we had time, is to say that the ADB has to be congratulated. As far as what regards Mozambique, is for what they have done since 1977, when we established partnership. At that time, the other institutions were more powerful, were shy, were shying away from us. And there were many reasons why. It's because we never had stability in the country after independence proclamation in 1975. And and also there was this Cold War, but ADB came and became our partner, reliable partner. And I congratulate ADB also because of what they have done for Africa in general. And at present, we see the role played by President Adesina, who is my younger brother. And he has been delivering, and he shows us that he knows Africa, and not only him, but also with his team working in different countries. The example of my country. Uh, I would like to take this opportunity to say congratulations, but we are celebrating 60 years of ADB, and it was not always additional. I don't know, were you born? 60 years, yes. So I would like to take this opportunity also to say that it occurs to my memory the names of at least three of his predecessors, because with those I have worked. And so I think that it's worth evoking their names here. I didn't hear the other speeches speaking about them, although we are celebrating the 60th anniversary. I, I, I refer to late Babakan Jai. Babakan Jai is one of those with whom we worked closely to, to reconstruct the country and to construct the country in Mozambique. And then I would mention the name of the Omar Kabaj, Omar Kabaj from Morocco. We worked also together, and then Donald Kaberuka. All this worked not only for Mozambique, but for the region, SADC region. And at that time, we were having this spirit of collaboration, and infrastructure were mentioned here by President President Sasungesu, and energy. At that time, the problem was coordinating efforts on infrastructure, railways, roads, dams, electricity, all infrastructure necessary. So this is not a new theme. He referred to Inga. It was not a new theme of those days. But what was missing there was this engine to make things happen. So what I could advise is to the ADB to be that engine to make things happen. We are having here ministers of finance. The ministers of finance are more practical than we. I was Minister of Foreign Affairs. We would speak about generalities, but when you come to the ground, you need someone to make things happen. So the ideas which we heard here start from far beyond, like when we joined the United Nations in 1975. What I found there was the discussion about a new economic order. And that idea of a new economic order vanished, I don't know why. But the new economic order is still valid for today. What we're discussing here is a new economic order, because we're speaking about reform of structures. So, if I'm running away from your question, you may.
That's okay, Your Excellency. I think you're doing very, very well. Just ending on a positive note here. The question related to the role that you've played on the continent, and
or to challenge this problem of debt.
yes,
Yeah. Well, debts are committed when you don't have money, and you look for money in order to do something and to produce money. And so this is what is missing, because we go and have a debt and we come and then we go and have a debt because we don't know how to put the money to a good value. And I think that the ADB should be that bank of Africa. We have now an African Union. The idea of the Bank of Africa came from even before OAU. It was one of the things which should be done. But when the ADB was created, I think that we did not look at it as the Bank of Africa. We thought that it was just a bank to serve Africa. No, this is our bank, this is Bank of Africa. And so we have to have ways of using this bank even to help the fragile states so that they have institutions which work, which can create jobs, so that we have the productivity, so that the little money we have, it multiplies, so that we don't have to incur into debts all the time. So Mozambique is one of the countries which was forgiven. That was forgiven in my time when I was acting head of state, and forgiven. But we had the debt again because we didn't have the means to make our potential wealth to become a real wealth which can be converted into a real value to make business in the world. So we had, because we didn't have the skills, when ADB came in 1977, found this problem that we didn't have skills, where maybe 90% illiterate in Mozambique. And so, as President Mnangagwa said, the training of the of people so that they have know-how to transform our resources into value. It's a very valid point to which will help us to go away of the need of going for that. And we have to have this African bank so that it's our channel. If we wanted to get a debt, we should have this channel, and not to jump to the big ones there. And so, because ADB knows us, it's the ND, how do you say it? ADN, the ADN of ADB is the ADN of Africa, of the African Union, and so on. So they know. So they are there to help to resolve the problems, and this is what the bank should not be shy to go and help us in each country to do things the right way, so that we come out with big figures, as they were announced here by President Ruto and by Daidesina himself. So in each country, we should have what is called in generic terms, good governance, also in the field of economy. And this, I think that it is also the role of the bank. But to finalize, the bank will not do anything successful if we continue to have many voices in Africa. We are saying that we want to have a voice in the international arena, but that voice is there in Africa? Are we speaking the same voice? It's a question we have to ask ourselves all the time. Are we speaking with one voice? As we are here with the ministers of finance, maybe we are trying to speak the same voice. But if we go to another forum, are we going to speak the same voice when we go to the United Nations? When we go to Europe? So we need to have one voice so that ADB knows what to do, because they can have the leverage. They can bring more partners, their connections. And additional is very good in that. But I think that all the others were good to create new partnerships. And so this is what I can tell you, that this would do away with this problem of the debt, because we would be ourselves doing ourselves to improve on the development of our resources so that they become a real wealth.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. President Joachim Chisano, thank you so much for your thoughts. Distinguished presidents, unfortunately, we've run out of time and we do have to go on to the next panel, but we want to thank you most sincerely. One, for gracing this occasion, for taking time out, and for your very thoughtful ideas about moving Africa's agenda forward. We do not take it lightly. We appreciate your presence here and the excellent ideas and thoughts that you have provided us with in your respective countries. We wish you all the very best as you continue to lead and transform your countries. At this note, I'd like to say a big thank you to President Sassou Nguesso, President Emerson Mnangagwa, President Hassan Mahmoud, Vice President Prosper Bazombanza, and dear President Joachim Chisano. Thank you very much, gentlemen and Mr. Presidents. We really, really appreciate your contributions today, and we wish you all the very best. Thank you so much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in just a few moments, as Her Excellencies conclude formalities, we will ask that you be seated. We do have a treat for you. In just a few moments, there'll be a quick turnaround. I believe that arrangements are being made for the next segment of the program. If the individuals involved with that can come on stage, that will be much appreciated. In the next few seconds, we will transition to the next segment of this annual meeting's opening day. For the young men and women coming on stage, about to put on a spectacular performance, can I give them a warm round of applause? Very, very much deserved.
nation.
Africa, Africa, manien, New Africa, Africa, manien. Imekuwa safari miaka 60 zilizopita, changamoto mbalimbali zimetuleta pamoja, transforming lives across borders, one country at a time. We are the continent of the brave. Oh, Africa, rise.
Ladies and gentlemen, Amabwana, Mesdames et Messieurs, turn your history books to page 60, find the sentence on economic independence. Step to the past and declare your political presence. Take a walk with the ancestors, disrupt pioneers and the innovators. Remember of the hard-fought revolution, its might against the colonial dictators, and of the right to make mistakes, the right to get up to plenty of choices, economic freedom so fervently demanded, with Kwame Nkrumah as one of the leading voices.
Sekta ya elimu na mazingira, sekta ya kilimo na teknolojia.
From the almost countries of a continent holds the Africa Development Bank, promoting the fair sharing of resources that each one of us could rise in rank. Their mission, so clear and true, to provide healthcare, provide education, to provide affordable homes, to transform lives, to eliminate poverty, answer freedom's call. In the words of President Adesina, I believe Africa will shine and fulfill its destiny. I still believe that we shall be who we are meant to be.
It's been a journey, time to celebrate. It's been a journey, Africa celebrate.
Okay, we can. We have to rewind that. Okay. You need a song. Okay. Thank you.
Mais la croissance ne doit jamais s'arrêter, ni les rêves s'évanouir dans les nuages. Les épreuves d'aujourd'hui exigent unité et courage. Together, we have risen and shown that we have the required strength to be a brother's keeper, responsible for delivering health and wealth. Africa will keep shining and fulfill its destiny. This remains a Destina's dream. A difference can and will definitely be made if we work as a team. As we celebrate this 60th anniversary, remember who you are. Keep the dream alive.
Africa! Awero Africa! Awero Africa manyen! New Africa! Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, and thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, what you've just seen is a curtain raiser to the 60th anniversary of the African Development Bank. On the 25th of May, 1963, one of the first resolutions that was passed by the Organization of African Unity was, I quote, the establishment of an African Development Bank, unquote. The following year, events took place in Khartoum, Sudan, and the bank was born in 1964. But coincidentally, 2 months after the resolution, in 1963, of May, in July of that same year, I was born. So I'm a child of the OAU, and therefore it is fitting that I am also a child of the African Development Bank. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it will be a short commemorative program, very short. The time is gone. We're not going to keep you for too long. As part of this commemoration, the full story will be told sometime in September this year in Abidjan. But just to give you a teaser, we will call upon 3 instrumental institutions to make 5 minutes remarks each. 5 minutes. We will call upon the President of the African Development Bank. We will call upon the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, and we will call upon the President of the Republic of Kenya. And after their statement, they will stay a little bit and we will unveil the 10-year strategy of the African Development Bank. But before we do that, there's a story that needs to be told just briefly on video. Please.
"60 years of making a difference. 60 years of being Africa's solutions bank. 60 years of accelerating development and transformation. Of feeding our continent, providing clean water and sanitation, lighting up communities, connecting borders and people, interesting markets and opportunities, defying fragility and enhancing resilience, boosting skills and entrepreneurship, bridging public and private sector partnerships through knowledge, innovation, and creativity. From little acorns, oak trees grow. For 60 years, the African Development Bank has been at the forefront of collective efforts to build a brighter and more prosperous Africa.
African countries are resilient and are doing well despite the challenges posed by climate change. You are investing in the right place, Africa.
I have cherished the idea of a democratic and free society.
When the greatest boxer of all time, Muhammad Ali, embarked on a tour of Africa, when South African singer Miriam Makeba took the world by storm with a sensational song, when leaders of independent African countries gathered in Cairo to open the second organization of the African Unity Summit. Their goal was clear: to build a strong, more resilient, and prosperous Africa. That same year, finance ministers from independent African countries gathered in Lagos, Nigeria, to inaugurate the African Development Bank. Their mandate and vision? To transform Africa socially and economically, and to integrate the continent's economy by accelerating the movement of people, goods, and services. With an initial and modest investment of $2.3 million in 1967, the African Development Bank has grown to become the continent's only AAA-rated financial institution with a capital base of $208 billion and over $184 billion in investments in diverse sectors of Africa's economy. Later on, non-regional member countries were invited to join, greatly expanding the bank's capital base. And the African Development Fund raised the largest replenishment of $8.9 billion for the 16th replenishment of the bank's concessional window. Today, the African Development Bank stands tall as Africa's trusted solutions bank, with more than 5,400 transformative life-changing projects implemented across the continent. Our innovative financial instruments, including hybrid capital, are models for other global multinational development banks. As Africa continues to face one of the greatest challenges of our time, we have become a leading global voice for climate finance equity, an architect for building climate resilience and adaptation, a trusted partner for meeting the needs of African countries ravaged by droughts, floods, cyclones, and environmental change. Everywhere on the continent, the terrain we know best, the impact of our work and investments are evident. In cities and in the countryside, in primary schools, colleges and universities, in agriculture, and in farms with climate-resilient crops, in healthcare through clinics and care centers, in hydro, wind, geothermal, and solar power, in water access and irrigation, in vocational training, businesses and startups, in ports, airports, roads, aviation, and rail transportation. Each day, in a world of dynamic change and challenges, we are touching the lives of millions of Africans and connecting Africa to Africa and Africa to the world.
Across Africa, the impact of our high fives has been felt. In the past 7 years, Your Excellencies, the operations of the bank have impacted directly the lives of 400 million people.
Together, we have made progress. Together, we are shaping Africa's development. Together, we can and we will do much more in the years to come while overcoming new challenges and global uncertainties, including pandemics, geopolitical tensions, and climate change. Over 60 years, the dedicated and visionary work of former and present staff, management, board members, and governors of the bank have helped make the African Development Bank the globally respected development finance institution that it is today. In the years ahead, we are committed to leading, innovating, challenging, shaping, and influencing the African landscape. Working together and as partners, we will help create the future of our dreams, an Africa that is even more transparent, prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and integrated. Let's celebrate 60 years of achievement, 60 years of transformation, and 60 years of making a tangible difference in the lives of the people of Africa. Here is to 60 years of making a difference.
I think that
Congratulations to my good friend, President Adesina, and the African Development Bank.
Thank you very much for having me, and congratulations to the ADB for 60 years.
La Banque africaine de développement, notre banque, joue un rôle essentiel dans le développement des pays africains, et ce, depuis plus de 6 décennies.
It is a profound honor to address you as we celebrate 6 decades of the exceptional contributions of the African Development Bank to Africa's development landscape.
On behalf of the Africa 50 team, I extend our heartfelt congratulations on this momentous 60th anniversary milestone. We are looking forward to many more decades of shared progress and prosperity.
I think that deserves more applause. Without further ado, may I please welcome the President of the African Development Bank for some brief remarks.
Thank you, Secretary General. Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, their governors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to be able to address you briefly on this auspicious occasion of the celebration of the 60th anniversary of the African Development Bank, your bank. As you stay here for the next 3 days of these annual meetings, we will be discussing, celebrating, reflecting on the work of the bank, the journey we have traveled in supporting Africa, and journey yet to be traveled. One thing is sure, we are on the right journey, a journey to accelerate the development of Africa. It is amazing that in 60 years that we've been traveling this journey, we are not tired. Just like Kenyans always run and win on long distance races, so are we. We are running to win for Africa. In 60 years, we have not diminished. In 60 years, we have grown. In 60 years, we are delivering at scale for Africa. From just the initial committee of 9 when we started, and 23 countries who signed up when we launched out, we now count 81 member countries. When the founders of the African Development Bank met in Khartoum, Sudan in 1963, they had a dream, promoting and accelerating the economic and social development of African countries. 1 year after, in 1964, I was only 4 years old. The first board of governors of the bank met in Lagos, Nigeria. So started the journey of hope for Africa. From our first projects in Sierra Leone, the National Development Bank of Sierra Leone, and Kenya right here, Mr. President, the Athi River, Namanga Road in Kenya's southeastern region connecting to Tanzania, we now have over 5,600 projects across Africa. As we continue this journey of hope for Africa, we honor and celebrate the hard work, the leadership, and the efforts of 7 presidents of the bank before me. I would like to therefore honor the service and tremendous accomplishments of those presidents. President Mamoun Bihari, President Abdulwahed Labidi, President Kwame Fudwa, President Willem Mungoba, who was somebody who also liked bow tie like myself, President Babaka Ndiaye, President Omar Kabaj, and President Donald Kaberuka. The dream is being realized, one strategy at a time, one president at a time. But it takes all of our shareholders, you, to support us to make things happen. You, our shareholders, who celebrate with us today, you make the African Development Bank what it is today. You do so in many ways: your financial support, your moral support, but the support you give us in your various capitals. Our heads of states and government, you have continued to strongly support us as a bank over the last 60 years. And I'd like to use this time to particularly thank His Excellency President William Ruto for the wonderful announcement that you made this morning, that you'll be contributing $25 million to the African Development Fund. That will make you the largest contributor to that fund as a regional member country. Thank you also for your bold call for a 17th replenishment of the fund at $25 billion. And thank you for your seed financing towards that. And thank you once again, Mr. President. So important is the African Development Bank that the Organization of African Unity gave it a clear mandate, and you heard it from Chairperson Musa Faki, to mobilize development financing for Africa. And we are doing so with your collective support. In 2019, you, the shareholders of the bank, raised the capital of the bank from $93 billion to $208 billion, the highest in the history of the bank since it was established in 1964. Thank you very much. But the strength of the bank has always been its staff. From just 10 pioneer members in 1964, we now have 2,092 staff members today from 76 countries. We all come with one goal in mind: accelerate Africa's development. Our board of governors and board of directors from 81 member countries have been the guiding lights for the bank. From an initial capital base of $250 million, when we started, see where we are today. The African Development Bank has consistently maintained its AAA ratings and is the only AAA rated financial institution in Africa. We are proud to have created and incubated and nurtured solid African financial institutions, including the Africa Export-Import Bank, the West Africa Development Bank, Shelter Afrique, Africa 50, among others. The African Development Bank is a trusted voice for Africa at the global level. Whether it is at G7, whether it's at G20, the African Development Bank is there with a seat at the table, and we use that voice to advance Africa's interests. The African Development Bank is responsive to Africa's needs. When COVID-19 struck, we responded swiftly and increased net outflows to countries with a crisis response facility of up to $10 billion. Your Excellencies, the African Development Bank is now helping to support Africa to produce its own medicines and vaccines. And that is what led us as an institution to create a new institution called the African Pharmaceutical Technology Foundation. I would like to thank you, Mr. President Kagame, as the chairman of the Eminent Advisory Council of this foundation. And thank you very much for hosting this foundation's headquarters in Kigali. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am delighted that in less than 1 year since its establishment, the African Technology Foundation, like all the other institutions we set up before, was listed by DIVEX as one of the 24 institutions to watch out for globally in 2024. Just last week, I was at the G7 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting in Stresa, Italy, where the G7 strongly supported the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, jointly developed by the African Development Bank, Africa 50, and the Africa Union. It was quite exciting that the G7 collectively pledged $150 million to AGIA. The G7 also pledged support for the callable capital increase of the African Development Bank. The G7 also signaled strong support for the successful 17th replenishment of the African Development Fund. Never has the African Development Bank received such wide recognition and strong support across the board for its work by the G7. We can take pride that from our very humble beginnings, the African Development Bank is today a globally respected institution, taking its place among global financial institutions, innovating and leading. The African Development Bank issued hybrid capital on the global capital market, the first ever by a multilateral development bank, creating a new global asset class for institutional investors. The African Development Bank is the first and the only multilateral development bank to do synthetic securitization, transferring risks from our sovereign and non-sovereign portfolios to the private sector institutional investors. In 2021, your bank, the African Development Bank, was ranked the best multilateral financial institution in the world by Global Finance. In 2022, the African Development Fund, our concessional lending institution, was ranked as the second best concessional financing institution in the world by the Center for Global Development, ahead of all 48 concessional financing institutions, including in OECD countries. In 2022, the African Development Bank was ranked is good enough for Africa. Happy 60th anniversary. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Asante sana. Shukran. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your insightful statement. May I invite His Excellency, Mr. Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, to make a brief statement.
Excellences, Monsieur le chef d'État et de gouvernement, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, distingués invités. Il y a 61 ans, naissait l'Organisation de l'Unité africaine, actuellement Union africaine. Un an après, l'organisation continentale a mis au monde son premier enfant, c'est sa fille, la Banque africaine de développement. Les anniversaires sont des moments certes de réjouissance, mais aussi et surtout d'évaluation du parcours et des projections dans l'avenir. La Banque africaine du développement a fait un excellent travail pour l'Afrique durant les 6 décennies passées. Son portefeuille dans chacun des États membres est fort consistant. L'Union africaine, vous le savez, s'est donnée à l'occasion de son 50e anniversaire en 2013 l'agenda 2063, qui peut se résumer dans le triptyque une Afrique intégrée, une Afrique prospère et une Afrique en paix. Elle a chargé la Banque africaine de développement de mobiliser les ressources nécessaires dans le continent et au-delà pour financer cet agenda. Cet agenda dessine des projets phares en matière d'infrastructure, d'énergie, de sécurité alimentaire, de santé, d'éducation. Il est fort ambitieux. Merci, cher frère Dr Adesina, pour les efforts accomplis jusqu'à là pour la réalisation de l'Afrique que nous voulons. Aujourd'hui, 60 ans après, notre continent fait face encore à des défis très importants. Certes, nous ne sommes pas comme au début des indépendances dans les années 60. Beaucoup a été fait. Mais je crois que l'autosatisfaction n'est pas de mise. De même, l'autoflagellation. Il faut trouver donc la juste appréciation entre les deux. L'Afrique aujourd'hui reste un continent qui a de sérieux problèmes de manque d'infrastructures. Nous avons lancé la zone de libre-échange continentale. Le président Sassou Nguesso l'a dit, elle ne pourrait jamais être effective tant que physiquement, on ne peut pas connecter les différentes parties du continent. Donc, les défis importants restent celui des infrastructures. L'Union africaine a mis en place une institution spécialisée qui est l'ODANEPAD en la matière et travaille main dans la main, entre autres avec la Banque africaine de développement. L'énergie, cela a aussi été dit. Près de 600 millions d'Africains ne connaissent pas encore l'électricité. Comment on peut envisager un développement réel sans l'énergie? Un autre très grand défi, et je suis heureux, tout comme le président Sassou, qu'il ait été annoncé 300 millions d'Africains qui seraient connectés d'ici 2030 et on aurait réduit de 50% ceux qui n'avaient pas accès à l'électricité. C'est un défi majeur et j'encourage fortement la Banque africaine de développement à s'investir davantage. La BAD ne peut pas faire mieux si elle n'a pas d'abord le soutien des États membres. Soutien financier et surtout soutien politique qui doit lui permettre d'occuper sa place et toute sa place pour le progrès dans ce continent. Un autre phénomène annihile un peu les efforts dans le continent africain, c'est les questions de paix et de stabilité. L'Union africaine a revitalisé son fonds de la paix. Aujourd'hui, nous avoisinons les 400 millions de dollars, ce qui va nous permettre de travailler un peu dans l'amélioration. Mais l'Afrique est touchée également par le phénomène du terrorisme, qui est une menace à la paix et à la sécurité internationale. Et ça, vous le savez, cela est du ressort du Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies. Heureusement qu'il y a l'année dernière une résolution qui s'engage à financer 75% des opérations de paix menées par l'Union africaine, notamment dans la lutte contre le terrorisme dans le continent africain. Il reste 25% des gaps à trouver également pour financer à 100% la paix et la stabilité dans le continent africain. Je souhaite, et la BAD a déjà commencé à le faire, à penser au financement de la sécurité. Si on n'a pas la sécurité, on n'a pas l'instabilité, eh bien, nous n'allons jamais améliorer notre notation, et c'est là, vous les professionnels, vous le savez très bien, sur les narratifs et sur la situation donc, de notre continent. C'est un défi majeur sur lequel il faut absolument réfléchir. L'Union africaine est en pleine réforme. Je remercie le président Kagame et le président Ruto qui, de concert avec la Commission, mènent cette très difficile réforme. Nous avons là également accompli des progrès, mais il n'en demeure pas moins. Et je l'ai dit avec beaucoup de regrets, il manque encore suffisamment de volonté politique au niveau de nos États pour pousser, parce qu'il faut parler d'une seule voix, ce qui n'est malheureusement pas encore le cas dans différentes situations. L'Afrique, l'Union africaine, la Banque africaine de développement ne peuvent porter le rêve de ce continent qu'en étant unis, intégrés et parlant d'une seule voix. Dans un monde qui, vous le savez, est en plein bouleversement. Et pour avoir droit au chapitre, il faut partir unis. Donc l'intégration, la prospérité est intimement liée et à l'intégration de nos économies et à la stabilité et à la paix. Il nous faut donc des efforts importants à accomplir. On peut compter sur le génie des peuples africains, sur le dynamisme de sa jeunesse, de la majorité de sa population que sont les femmes, et j'interpelle le leadership africain sur la nécessité de se concentrer, d'améliorer la gouvernance politique et économique dans notre continent pour nous donner les meilleurs moyens pour soutenir nos actions pour l'Afrique que nous voulons. Bon anniversaire pour la BAD et je vous remercie.
Thank you, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Without the OAU, there would have not been an African Development Bank. Thank you, and thank you for the partnership. May I invite His Excellency, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, to make some brief remarks.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, indulge me because I have been asked actually instructed, I think, by President Sassou Nguesso to give a progress report on the meeting we had in Paris on the financing pact. And you know, in keeping with African tradition, when an elder gives instructions, you have to obey. So let me give a brief progress report, and I hope he will be listening. After the meetings we had in Paris, we subsequently had the Africa Climate Summit, in which we consolidated our position as a continent. And we were clear on what kind of financing infrastructure that we were looking for. Number one, we were looking for concessionary resources that would make sense to our development. Number two, we were looking for long-term resources that had grace periods of up to 10 years and repayment periods of up to 40 years. Number three, we wanted these resources at scale. And number four, we were very clear that these resources were meant for the financing of our development. We subsequently took our position to COP28, and we had a very positive conversation. And finally, we launched the Africa Green Industrialization Initiative that will provide a mechanism for investment in our green energy resources to facilitate industrialization, to create jobs, to create wealth, and to move Africa to the next level. Subsequently, we came here a month ago, and by the time we were in COP28, the difficulties we had in Paris of whether we need reform of the international financial architecture. You remember the heated conversation we had in Paris, because many countries in Paris did not believe that there was a requirement or there was need of whatever nature for the transformation and reform of the international financial architecture. But by the time we were getting in December, in COP28, there was concurrence in Europe, in America, in Asia, and of course in Africa, that there was need. And everybody agreed that there was need to reform these financial institutions. Fast forward, last month, we had a meeting here with the World Bank to discuss concessionary resources in the IDA window replenishment 21. We made very good progress with the World Bank in that framework. Step forward, last week, the outcome of my visit to the United States, there were two significant outcomes. Outcome number one is investment of $1 billion for the first data center powered by green energy in Kenya. And number two, after extensive consultations with President Biden, and because he confirmed to me that he believed in the transformation of Africa and he wanted to support, because of the conversations we had, you remember, at the Africa Leaders Summit in America last year. And because America is a big contributor both to IDA and to Africa Development Fund, President Biden committed $21 billion that will go to some of it to the two institutions, World Bank, IDA framework, and Africa Development Bank's Africa Development Fund program, which we are discussing here today. The replenishment the 25 billion Adesina is looking for the Africa Development Fund. And today, Mr. President, we are furthering that conversation with the confirmations we're going to make to enhance significant funding, concessional resources to Africa Development Fund so that we can meet the targets where we wanted, concessional funding, long-term resources, and at scale. I hope I have made a good case and I have met the pass mark. Your Excellencies, I acknowledge the insightful remarks you have made on Africa's prospects. Your words underline the critical need to match our continent's immense potential with corresponding concessional financing and action. I reiterate that there is a clear necessity for increased funding in the next replenishment cycle of Africa Development Fund with a target of not less than US $25 billion. Looking ahead, the Africa Development Bank will be central in addressing Africa's challenges by financing climate change mitigation, adaptation, green industrialization, and closing the infrastructure gap in rail, in road networks, internet, broadband, energy, and the development of our ports. As we celebrate the Africa Development Bank's 60th anniversary here in Nairobi, it is vital for us as African leaders to support the bank's transformative role by supporting its access to concessional resources for our continent's transformation. Additionally, it is time, as I said, to support an African credit rating agency that will provide accurate and fair assessment of Africa's economic realities and status. It is said in our country that poverty cannot be shared. What can be shared is wealth and prosperity. And so, Kenya can only be prosperous in a thriving continental neighborhood. That is why last week, as an engaged the American government, 60% of the time I spent prosecuting Africa's agenda, and 40% of the time I spent pushing Kenya's agenda, because I understand that there cannot be a prosperous Kenya without a thriving Africa. And therefore, I want to state without fear of any contradiction that the progress and transformation of Kenya is intertwined with that of Africa. Kenya is honored to host this meeting, and we take the boards and management of the two institutions, we thank them for this privilege. I have already requested that after hosting Africa Development Bank's annual meeting 30 years ago in 1994, and again today in 2024, it would be fair and fitting for Kenya to host again in 2054. I am told by my brother Evangelist Adesina that my request is under consideration. I would request that this decision be made early, because neither we nor the decision makers then might be fit enough to do so 30 years from now. Once again, I welcome you all to Nairobi and Kenya and wish you fruitful deliberations during this annual meeting of the African Development Bank and African Development Fund. I urge you to take time to sample the delights that Kenya has to offer, including a national park, which is just 10 minutes away from here. Thank you very much. Happy 60th anniversary, Africa Development Bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. But I see that you're already overthrowing my president as the evangelist for Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, we have spent quite an awful long time today. And we don't want you to continue to spend a lot of time, but we just have one little thing to do. The unveiling of the next 10-year strategy of the bank, which will take just a very few minutes. Can you please animate? And as you animate, can you please get copies ready? And I will call upon the President of the Republic. I will call upon the President of the African Development Bank. I will call upon the Chairperson of the African Union Commission and the Chairperson of the Board of Governors to please stand in the middle as they bring the copies for you to unveil. But prior to that, could you please animate? May I call on Caroline Kende-Robb and Nancy Baker to please bring copies. So here you have it, unveiled the next 10-year strategy of the African Development Bank Group. Governors, copies will be shared out to you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, the Head of State. Thank you, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. And thank you, Chairperson of the Board of Governors. And to close this session, may I please invite the Senior Vice President, Swazi Shabalala, to give a vote of thanks.
Good afternoon. I'm well aware that I'm standing between you and lunch, so I will be very brief. Excellencies, distinguished guests, Chairperson of the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank, Governors of the African Development Bank, alternate governors of the African Development Bank, Board of Directors, senior management, and hope that is everyone. I am honored to stand before you today at this auspicious occasion as we commemorate the African Development Bank's 60 years of existence in this beautiful city, the green city in the sun, Nairobi. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to convey our gratitude to the government and the people of Kenya for the cordial and very warm hospitality and all the measures taken to ensure the success of the 2024 annual meetings of the African Development Bank. We are greatly honored that you could be part of these celebrations today. Your bank is the realization of the dream of our illustrious forebears, that the African Development Bank would transform the continent into the Africa we want. Thank you for celebrating the journey and the remarkable achievements of our institution, even as we acknowledge the long road ahead towards prosperity and the fulfillment of Africa's aspirations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me express on behalf of the bank our deep gratitude to the governors, executive directors, the president, the chief, what do we call you again? The chief, he's got lots of names, and every single staff of the bank, past and present, for their dedication and commitment. And in conclusion, it is with the utmost sincerity that we express our hope for the continued success of the African Development Bank. Thank you, merci beaucoup, obrigada, shukran, asanteni sana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, SVP. Let me use this opportunity to profusely apologize to the initially planned 2 panels. But you can believe that we've had literally all the panels that we are supposed to have. And because heads of state have stayed for too long and lunch is getting cold, we'll rather transition to lunch and deeply apologize to the other 2 panels so that governors can do their work, because we still have the first sitting. So as we finish, we'll proceed for the high-level luncheon by invitation only. I'm sure you have your invitation. And may I invite my Kenyan counterpart to announce about the particular lunch that will follow also.
Thank you, Secretary General. There's lunch for everybody, so don't panic. So those who are not in the high-level lunch, right next to the high-level tent, there's lunch for everybody. And why don't we give ourselves a wonderful round of applause for being patient and staying till this time. And with that, I will request that we all be upstanding. We're going to have the 2 anthems again. We'll start with the African Union anthem and then finish with the Kenyan anthem. And after that, we'll kindly request that we remain standing as we allow the heads of state to exit towards the high-level lunch. Then the rest of us will be guided. For now, we start with the African Union anthem.
Town Talk sasa imeboreshwa zaidi. Kila siku ya wiki asubuhi tunapambazuka na maabudu na sifa kwenye kipindi cha baadaye tunakuletea mahojiano ya moja kwa moja kwenye one-on-one show.
Kwanza nianze kwa mtazamo kwamba umeona vile hali ilivyo.
The age that we are living in, so many things are happening.
Alafu nakuletea taarifa zinavyochipuka siku hiyo zikiwa ange kwenye In the News Headlines. Kisha tunaingia bungeni kutazama wabunge na kusikiliza tuliowaleta kupeleka bungeni iwapo iko imara.
Mr. Speaker,
they should not be given an opportunity to be in those committees.
Who told the people to close the business?
Kisha baadaye usiku kuinangana kwenye udadavusi kamili, Open Forum Political Show.
Open Forum Political Discussion Show.
Panya